At that time, after overcoming the seductive power of the Chandala maiden by the power of the Buddha, Ananda learned how deficient his capacities were. One day, he carefully consulted with the Buddha, inquiring about the method of practicing the path.
O Ananda, when you first decided to enter the path of awakening, did you by observing its superior features forsake the world of desire?
O Bhagwan, when I first encountered the superior marks of the Buddha's features, incomparable to anything of this world, I was convinced that the clear body of the Buddha, like that of a precious stone such as lapis lazuli, could never be born from worldly desires. For it is impossible for any man whose desire is coarse and whose mind is as murky as pus to emit such light. Because of this adoration, I decided to leave home and become a monk.
Well said, Ananda. If you really wish to realize the true awakening, answer my question sincerely. You have just said that, because of your sense of adoration for the features of the Tathagata, you decided to enter the path of the homeless. But through what sort of faculty did you see it and yearn for it?
O Bhagwan, I saw it through these eyes and yearned for it through this mind.
Ananda, there is no mistake in your answer, and yet you must also admit that it is these eyes and this mind that have let you transmigrate through the cycle of life and death till now. Therefore, Ananda, just as when the king of a country tries to subjugate bandits who infiltrate his territory, he must more than anything else know the area where they are, just so, in order to annihilate the dust of defilement, you must first find out where such eyes and mind are located. Where do you think your eyes and mind are located?
My eyes are in my face and my mind within my body.
Now, what do your eyes see in this lecture hall?
They see the presence of the Buddha, then that of disciples, and then the forest outside the building.
As you said, since the windows are now open in the room, it is possible to see the distant forest. But among the disciples here, are there any who look outside only without paying attention to the Tathagata?
O Bhagwan, there is none such.
O Ananda, if the mind is located within your body, it naturally will see more than anything else the interior of the body. But people cannot know anything about the interior of their bodies. Then is it possible to say that the mind is located within the body?
O Bhagwan, because of your instruction, I now understand that the mind is not within the body but outside it. For instance, when a candle is placed within a room, it does not illumine only itself but also the interior of the room, and then it extends its illumination outside of it. By contrast, people do not see the interior of the body but only its exterior.
However, Ananda, if the mind is located outside the body and the mind are separate. Then what the mind knows the body cannot sense, what the body senses the mind can never know. In actuality, however, what the mind knows the body also senses, what the body senses, the mind also recognizes. Therefore, Ananda, it cannot be said that the mind is outside the body.
Thus instructed, Ananda, holding his palms together, addressed the Buddha. If the mind is found neither within the body nor outside of it, where, may I ask, is the essence of the mind? May the Buddha, with his great compassion, clarify the truth as to where the mind is to be found and teach the essentials for those who practice the path.
O Ananda, all people are bound deeply by the fetters of karma from the immemorial past, because they do not realize two fundamental truths. First, they do not know that the ultimate root of life and death is the mind of delusion, believing that this mind is the essential nature of themselves, and second, they do not know that they are endowed with a pure mind, namely, the essence of awakening.
Having thus instructed him, the Buddha lifted his elbow, made a fist, and spoke.
Ananda, what do you see here?
The Buddha has now lifted his elbow and made a fist, to which the Buddha is calling our attention.
With what have you seen?
Together with the fellow disciples, I have seen with my eyes.
If it were with your eyes that you have seen, then you need not say that I have called your attention.
But what I have seen with my eyes, I have recognized as your fist with my mind.
Ananda, do you think that that which recognized it was your mind?
Yes, I think so.
Hush, Ananda, this is not your true mind.
At that moment, Ananda was greatly surprised. He said, "O Bhagwan, then what is my true mind?"
Ananda, the mind of conceptualization is unreal and illusory, for it arises upon causes and conditions, changes upon changing causes and conditions, and hence is unreal, non-substantial, and empty. As you became convinced that such was your mind's substance, there has arisen your lasting delusion.
Next, the Buddha, once again making a fist and then opening it, asked Ananda.
O Ananda, how do you see this?
As I see it, the Buddha made a fist and then opened it.
Did you see the opening and closing of my hand, or were the opening and closing in your own thinking?
It is the Buddha's hand in which I have seen the opening and closing. It is not my thinking that has determined them so.
Then is it my hand that moves or your mind?
It is the Buddha's hand that moves. Ananda said. Then, the Buddha further lifted his hand, moving it right and left, thereby giving some hint to Ananda's mind.
O Ananda, when you move your head, do you think that your mind moves, or that your thinking moves?
O Bhagwan, it is my head that moves, but there is no movement in my thinking. Said Ananda. Then, at that moment, the Buddha addressed the entire group of his disciples.
O disciples, it is just like this. People in general have fallen into erroneous thought, because their pure original mind has been defiled by the desires objectively incurred. Those defilements that are induced by external causes and conditions are in constant movement and change. Like guests from outside, they stay on the original mind, and like dust, they externally stick on it and defile it. Nevertheless, the pure mind, the basis of awakening, is actually neither caused to move nor defiled by their presence. Though covered deeply under the dusts of defilement, the original nature of the mind is not lost. Consider Ananda's statement that his head moves and not his thinking, and that my hand moves and not his thinking. You should carefully examine the matter and should not regard the defilement caused by external dusts as your essential nature. By becoming aware of the original mind of awakening, you must know the nature of your true self. If you are caught by the defilements that externally move and change, you will be forever chased by an inverted view of the world and wander through the streets of delusion.
Having thus heard, Ananda and the remaining disciples were all delighted with this prompt opening up of their understanding, and they looked up at the Buddha's countenance, just as an infant, having missed his milk, does when once again held by his mother. At that moment, King Prasenajit stood up from his seat, his posture reverent.
O Bhagwan, when I had not yet learned the teaching of the Buddha, I happened to meet Sanjayan Viratipitra, and he taught me at that time that when one's body perishes after death, it is in the state of nirvana. That we shall perish totally after death is a lonesome prospect. Now, however, that the Buddha has just revealed that the original mind is imperishable, I feel a great consolation. May the Buddha further teach us on the path through which we can enter the state of this imperishable mind.
O great king, is your body as strong as a diamond, or is it perishable?
It is perishable, Bhagwan.
While it is still not yet perished, how do you know that it is perishable?
This body is changing every moment, just like a fire gradually changing into ashes. O Bhagwan, when I was a child, even my skin was lovely, but now, because of aging, it is all wrinkled. Again, when I was young, my body was filled with youthful vigor, but now my spirit has declined and my mind has faltered. Though I am not clearly aware when and how far I have aged, looking back at the years of my life on a scale of decades, I can clearly recognize the degrees of aging. And if I scrutinize the matter more closely, even by a yearly scale, or even by a monthly scale, I can detect the change. Indeed, this process goes on every moment incessantly. This is the impermanence of human life, and according to this rule I have not the slightest doubt that this body of mine also will perish before too long.
Your Majesty has explained very well how the body will perish. Therefore, I shall now explain what is imperishable within the perishable body. O great king, when did you see the Ganges for the first time?
It was when I was 3 years old and taken by the Queen Mother to visit a shrine of the gods that I saw the river for the first time.
Great king, has there been any difference in the water of the river between today and those days?
Although many years have passed, it is still flowing exactly in the same way as in those days.
O great king, Is there then any difference in the way of your observing the flow of the river water between those days and today when your hair is mixed with white and your face is showing some wrinkles?
There is no difference whatsoever.
O great king, although your face shows some wrinkles, the way of your observation has not changed, though the changeable has changed, the unchangeable does not change. Whatever grows old changes, and whatever changes will perish. However, your majesty can see even within the perishable something that will not perish. O great king, therefore, contrary to the view of the non-Buddhist, we cannot say that when the body perishes, everything else also perishes.
Having thus listened to the Buddha's teaching, the king realized that even though one has to forsake the perishable body, there will remain something imperishable, assuring an everlasting life, and was extremely delighted along with other disciples. At that moment, Ananda stood up and addressed the Buddha. O Bhagwan, if our way of seeing has neither beginning nor end, is not that contrary to the Buddha's teaching?
Every phenomenon, Ananda, whether of things or of the mind, arises on the basis of causes and conditions, which are in turn also all originated from the mind. Till now, I have frequently explained this doctrine. Accordingly, you can comprehend that your body as well as your mind was originally manifested from the mind, which is, by nature, extremely subtle and clear. However, forgetting this subtle mind and experiencing delusion within the mind, whose essence is awakening, you believe that the resulting delusion is your essential nature, and that it is localized within the body. Thus you are not aware that hills and rivers, the great earth, and all things that exist in wide space have been manifested from that subtle original mind. Is it not, therefore, as foolish as, having caught the tiniest bubble, thinking that you have exhausted the great ocean?
By the words of the Buddha, I have become aware of the eternal nature of the mind. However, is it not true that my understanding of its presence is also accomplished by the discriminatory mind?
Ananda, if you say it is the discriminatory mind through which you have understood my teaching, then the teaching that you understood will also be a thing discriminated and cannot be said to be the essential nature of the teaching. O Ananda, when a man points at the moon with his finger, if another man only sees the tip of the finger and believes that he has seen the moon, he not only fails to see the moon but also does not understand the meaning of the pointing finger. Moreover, since such a man mistakes the finger that has no light for the moon that does, it must be said that he does not know even the nature of light nor that of darkness. It is indeed not possible to know the true nature of things by means of the discriminatory faculty. O Ananda, you said that you understood my words through the mind of discrimination. If the discriminatory faculty is truly your own mind, this discriminatory mind must be existent at all times without changing, but the process of discrimination arises depending upon conditions, and when these conditions are gone, it is bound to change and even perish. Indeed, there is no nature of such a faculty apart from the presence of conditions. However, quite independent of these conditions, which come and go, there is the essential nature of the mind that neither moves nor perishes. Such is the essential nature of your mind, the master. O Ananda, I shall further explain it by a metaphor. In a country inn, there are the innkeeper and the guests. The guests represent the mind of discrimination, for they come and stay depending on conditions, while when these conditions are gone, they leave the inn. However, the innkeeper always stays there whether guests are coming or going. Even if all guests are gone, it cannot be said that the inn is gone. Likewise, even when the mind of discrimination is gone because of the absence of the necessary conditions, it cannot be said that man's self is gone. O Ananda, you must not take the mind of discrimination, which changes because of external conditions, as your essential nature, but by transcending this phenomenal mind, make the mind that neither moves nor changes your master.
Ananda raised a thoughtful question to the Buddha. O Bhagwan, why does not the original mind that is not conditioned by external factors perish?
Ananda, listen attentively. This lecture hall is now well lighted because of the sun, but it will become dark when the sun sets. This light can be attributed to the day, the darkness to the night. The power of seeing, however, belongs to neither, for when brightness is present, it is not that the power to see darkness is lost, and when darkness is gone, it is not that there has arisen the capacity of seeing brightness. Whether brightness or darkness is coming or going, there remains the power of seeing brightness as well as darkness. Seeing the former is one moment of the mind, while seeing the latter is another. These phenomena do not represent the real nature of the mind, but that which is eternally existent, limited neither by brightness nor by darkness, is your true mind. Thus the true original mind must be known as affected neither by brightness nor by darkness, though being enveloped by various defilements, such as good and evil, love and hate, which come and go because of external causes and conditions, it is neither stained nor defiled, it is essentially subtle, pure, and imperishable.
The Buddha continued to elaborate on this profound insight.
O Ananda, when water is poured into a round vessel, it takes on a round shape, when poured into a square one, it takes on a square shape. But there is neither a round or a square form in the nature of the water. Just so, people perceive their lives, from the immemorial past, in varied ways, as when water is poured into large and small or round and square containers, and they experience good and evil, love and hate, and thereby they are caused to run after external things, subjecting themselves to various sufferings. This state of affairs is a form of delusion arisen from their erroneous conviction in identifying the original mind with the phenomenal self enchained by external conditions as exemplified by water vessels. Therefore when one gives the way of seeing himself bound by external conditions back to these conditions, and returns to his own true mind, which is not bound, he becomes identical with the Buddha, while his body and mind become perfect and clear. Unobstructed by anything, he is able to reach the Dharma-dhatu of the 10 directions directly through his own body.
The Buddha used a metaphor to further clarify his teachings.
O Ananda, when you make fire by placing a lens between the sun and dry grass, do you think that the fire comes from the lens, or that it comes from the dry grass, or that it comes from the sun? The lens is held by the man, the ray comes from the sky, and the grass is from the ground. The sun and the grass are far apart and cannot come into contact, but there is no doubt that the fire in the sun manifests itself on the grass when the lens is an auxiliary condition. The true original mind of the Tathāgatagarbha, from which the Buddhas are born, is the root source of faith, like the fire in the metaphor, which is omnipresent throughout the Dharma-dhatu. When this fire of faith once touches upon the grass of people with the Buddha's lens of insight as condition, there is no doubt that the flame of the fire that enlightens the Buddhahood within people will rise up with great intensity. Once the lens is directed toward a spot, there arises fire on that spot. Accordingly, when it is directed toward the totality of the Dharma-dhatu, it is inevitable that the entire world will be filled with fire. O Ananda, it is on the basis of this principle that the Buddha directs his Dharma lens toward everyone and all.
Because of the teachings of the Buddha, Ananda, as well as all the disciples at the gathering, became aware of the original mind of awakening. They understood that this physical body is like a tiny speck of dust floating in great space and regretted how foolish they were to have been entrapped by the birth and death of their flesh, thereby to have been worried, saddened, caused to suffer, and afflicted. Saluting the Buddha, the disciples said,
In possession of the wondrous Dharma as wide as the ocean, the immovable Buddha melts our delusion, which is as old as that of the immemorial past, and helps us at once to realize the Dharmakaya. His valor indeed has no limit. May we wish to become lords of the Dharma and save innumerable people. For endowed with this mind of profundity, to be in service in innumerable realms is the way to respond to the benefit of the doctrine. May the Buddha witness our resolution that we shall enter the world that suffers from all evils, and that we shall not enter nirvana till the last one becomes a Buddha. Even if the great sky should be exhausted, nothing will destroy this vow, which is as hard as diamond.
At that moment, the Venerable Punya, who was also in the assembly, stood up and with his palms together reverentially addressed the Buddha.
O Bhagavan, if this true original mind, which is awakening, and the mind of the Buddha are totally identified, having neither excess nor shortage, why is the world of differentiation born from such a Buddha mind?
O Punya, suppose a man enters a village but mistakes the direction of north and that of south. Does this mistake come from the mind of delusion or from the original mind of awakening?
O Bhagavan, the mind of delusion arises depending upon external conditions and has no real essence, hence it is, as it were, a rootless grass. Therefore, there should be no budding out of delusion from the rootless mind of delusion. Moreover, since awakening itself does in no way produce delusion, it cannot be said to have been born from the mind of awakening either.
If, then, someone who knows the village well teaches that confused man the right directions, is he going to lose his direction again?
There will be no more such mistakes.
O Punya, it is the same with the Buddha. Once he comes to the right understanding that the nature of delusion is empty and rootless, he will have no more delusion. O Punya, a man of afflicted eyes will see flowers in the sky, but once the affliction is cured he will no longer see them. The flowers that appear in the delusions are not essentially existent, but since people are afflicted by the ignorance of their eyes of insight, they are caused to imagine the presence of the duality of delusion and awakening. Those Buddhas whose eyes are free from affliction caused by ignorance have no more vision of skyflowers, whatever they see is solely the world of right awakening. Therefore, there is no world of differentiation at all in the minds of the Buddhas. O Punya, pure gold once refined will not return to ore. Once wood becomes ashes, there is no way for it to return to the original state of wood. How could the world of differentiation arise within the minds of the Buddhas who have severed the root of delusion? For it is merely a thought imagined from the deluded view. However, O Punya, the form of space is not determined, it is neither bright nor dark, neither moving nor still, and yet when the sun shines, brightness is manifest, when clouds spread, darkness is manifest, when winds blow, motion is manifest, when they die down, stillness is manifest. In short, since there is no determined form, space can manifest itself in whatever form it may take in accordance with given conditions. It is the same with the original mind of awakening, called the Tathāgatagarbha. It is neither empty nor is it of any material factor such as earth, water, fire, or wind, nor is it any of the psychophysical elements, such as the seen, heard, smelled, tasted, or touched. Nor is it a world in which ignorance manifests itself, nor is it its cessation. Since it is none of these, when one pursues his path while attaching himself to material factors, earth, water, fire, or wind, it can manifest his path as consisting of these components. Again, for someone who holds the insight that these forms are configured depending upon causes and conditions and hence are without any own being and empty, the Tathāgatagarbha is able to manifest itself in emptiness. It is able to manifest itself freely as morally right or wrong, matter or mind, existent or non-existent, without any obstruction. Moreover, people believe that, just as the moon reflected in water appears to move to the east along with a traveler proceeding eastward, or to the west along with another proceeding westward, the Tathāgatagarbha is found wherever they intend to look for it. O Punya, people turn back from this originally endowed awakening and let their minds be bound by the forms of things, entrapped in the dusts of defilement and suffering bondage. However, the Buddha is one with the originally endowed awakening that permeates the entirety of the Dharmadhatu with no obstruction whatsoever. He can reveal one thing as innumerable things as one thing, small as large, and large as small, and he can identify one thing with innumerable things and vice versa, and small with large and vice versa, with no obstruction, while staying at the hall of practice. He can permeate himself in all of the 10 directions, as well as absorb the innumerable worlds of the 10 directions within his single body. He can show at the tip of a single hair the entire Dharmadhatu as precious as a gem and can demonstrate within a speck of dust the great turning of the Dharma wheel in transforming delusion into awakening. Therefore to the eyes of the ordinary man the Buddha appears to be creating states of differentiation within the world of differentiation.
Purna posed a question to the Buddha.
O Bhagwan, if people are originally endowed with the true mind of awakening, why do they create illusions to obstruct its light and thereby place themselves in a position to be drowned in the cycle of samsara?
O Purna, there was once a man called Yajnadatta in Sravasti. One morning, as he stood in front of a mirror, he was shocked because he found neither his face nor his head reflected in it. He was so convinced that he had become a specter that he lost his mind. Likewise, although there is no reason for which delusion should exist within awakening, people have for a long period of time imagined illusions because of the external dusts of defilement and thereby continued to live lives of insanity with delusion after delusion. Nevertheless, just as Yajnadatta, when he regained his mind, recognized his head still intact, so when people sweep their delusions away they will realize that each of them has the true mind of original awakening. Moreover, when Yajnadatta regained his mind, his head did not come from anywhere else, nor had it gone anywhere when he was in the state of insanity. Likewise, the mind of original awakening has neither a new origin because of man's awakening, nor is it lost while he is in delusion. Where erroneous thought ends, their awakening is. Hence delusion and awakening are essentially one. Purna, just as a foolish man, though possessing a fabulous gem, is unaware of his treasure and goes on wandering and begging for food, people who are unaware of possessing a mind of original awakening go on foolishly seeking it in others. When a foolish man is told by the wise of his fabulous gem, he is able to gain wealth at will. It is the same with people who, with the Buddha's instruction, must realize that they possess in themselves the true mind of original awakening.
Because of this instruction given by the Buddha, those of the entire assembly were able to resolve their doubts and realize perfect insight. Then the Buddha asked the great Bodhisattvas who attended the assembly, "What among my teachings led you to realize awakening?" In response, the great Bodhisattvas reverentially related their respective paths to awakening. First, Bodhisattva Gandhavya said,
Once the Buddha summoned us to meditate on the various aspects of phenomena, and I withdrew to a dark room and quietly engaged in samadhi. At that time, I noted that some of the disciples were burning aloe incense, and a draught of air carried its fragrance into the room and it entered my nose. Then I thought, this fragrance is neither the original wood itself, nor air itself, nor smoke itself, nor fire itself, neither has it its determined direction in which to go, nor has it a definite passage from which to come, and yet, without the wood, air, smoke, or fire, and without the ways of its coming and going, I should not experience this fragrance. Upon this reflection, I all at once understood the truth of ignorance. Thus through the clue of the world that fragrance embellishes, I realized awakening, having my body free from defilements and perfumed with wondrous fragrance.
Then, Bodhisattva Pilandavatsa said,
One day, while I was mindful of the Buddha's remark that this world has little worth for enjoyment, I went to a town for alms begging. On the road, my foot was injured by a poisonous thorn, and I experienced a severe pain throughout my body. Then I thought, I feel this pain because I have a faculty of sensing it, and yet, while experiencing such a pain, as soon as I recollect the joy of the Dharma, I forget the pain of the wound. This being the case, there may not be a special faculty in my body to sense the pain, but, depending upon given conditions, the single mind may become pained or joyous. In short, this mind has no determined form, so that when confused it becomes defilement, whereas when controlled it becomes insight. Thinking thus, I was in concentration for a while, and in the meantime, I totally forgot the pain, feeling both body and mind as empty, and I became no longer obstructed or bound by anything. Thus within 21 days I exhausted all of my defilements. Therefore my awakening was occasioned by mindfulness of the origin of sense perception.
Then, Bodhisattva Uchasma said,
Once upon a time, I recollect, my nature was filled with greed. But when Dharmapadmashakusalatavada Buddha appeared in this world, he taught me that whoever has greed will become an aggregate of fires and therefore that I must meditate upon the presence of cool air as well as warm air within my body. While I was practicing this as instructed by the Buddha, there arose sacred rays from within my body, and the fuel of defilements of greed changed into the fire of insight and began to burn. O Bhagavan, in this way, I realized awakening by the power of the fire-emitting meditation. Thus Buddhas call me Uchasma, meaning fiery head, while for my part, in order to respond to the benefit I received, I made a vow to appear as a protector for overcoming Maras whenever Buddhas realize the supreme awakening.
Then, Bodhisattva Uchasma said,
O Bhagavan, once upon a time, when the Buddha called Samantaprabha appeared in this world, I became his disciple and entered the life of a mendicant. For a long time, as my Dharma practice I took it upon myself to level the grounds and span bridges where there were dirty roads, estuaries, and fields that endangered the passage of carts and horses. I met many Buddhas during this period of time. Again, whenever I found someone unable to handle his luggage within a crowd of people, I offered to help carry it without pay. In times of famine, I carried people on my back, not minding the distance, When I happened to see an ox-drawn carriage stuck in the mud and having a hard time, I rendered help by pushing it from behind. While doing these practices, a Buddha called Vishvabhu appeared in this world, and on the way to the palace to accept a king's offering, he happened to pass the road that I had leveled for his passage. When the Buddha passed by, he patted my head and said to me, "Make your mind ground also even. When you accomplish this, the entire ground of the world will also be made level." From this teaching, I realized that the world of differentiation had arisen originally over the Tathāgatagarbha, affected by the power of imagination. Not only the atomic particles that make up this body are manifested from illusory imagination, but also those particles that build up the universe are equally manifested from the same source of illusory imagination. By understanding these two kinds of tiny particles as totally identical in their nature, my mind at once opened its horizon and perfected my insight.
Then, Bodhisattva Viduryaprabha said,
O Bhagwan, an immeasurably long time ago, I happened to meet the appearance of Amitabha Buddha in this world and received from him various teachings. We are endowed with the true mind of original awakening. Not only the world of differentiation but also the body of impermanence and suffering have all derived from our illusory imagination. Through practicing samadhi on the subjects of the world, the body, and the mind, I eventually realized that those innumerable beings living in the 10 directions are all illusory forms and are just like large numbers of mosquitoes, gadflies, and the like placed in a small bowl, busily flying around and crying aloud. Because of this understanding, soon after meeting the Buddha, I could enter the state in which my body and mind equally emitted light without any obstruction.
Next, the Bodhisattva Mahastamaprapta arose together with 52 other bodhisattvas and after saluting the Buddha at his feet spoke.
O Bhagwan, it was an uncountable number of years ago, comparable with the number of the grains of sand along the river Ganges, when a Buddha called Amitabha appeared in this world, and following him 12 other Buddhas successively appeared during the period of 12 kalpas. The last Buddha of this series was called Vikramasuriyacandraprabha, who taught me about the practice of the concentration for recollecting the Buddhas. O Bhagwan, this Buddha taught me that the Buddhas of the 10 worlds are compassionate toward people in the same way as a parent toward an only child. If people too recollect these Buddhas in the depths of their hearts, just as a child looks for his mother, they will be able to see the Buddhas before long either in this world or in the next. O Bhagwan, this practice, namely the recollection of the Buddhas, is called embellishment with fragrant splendor. This means that, just as a man who is perfumed by incense always carries the fragrance with him, anyone who practices the concentration of recollecting the Buddhas will always be embellished by the fragrance of the Buddha's wisdom. O Bhagwan, in this way I was able to understand the truth of emptiness that has neither birth nor death, during the period of my pursuit of the path, through the mind engaged in the recollection of the Buddhas. Therefore, even today, as I have appeared in this world, I am trying to receive those people who practice the same discipline and to help them return to the pure land of Amitabha Buddha.
At that moment, the Buddha emitted bright rays from his body and illuminated those innumerable Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who reside in the distant 10 regions, while those Buddhas and Bodhisattvas returned the lights over the assembly. When trees, forests, ponds, and marshes were all illuminated, these objects all at once manifested the truth as it was inherent in themselves, each of them emitting its own rays in interaction with others and all together reflecting their splendors like a network of gems strung in innumerable meshes. The spaces of the 10 directions were thereby transformed into a sublime cosmos consisting of 7 kinds of precious jewels, not only the great earth but also mountains and rivers all extinguished. Their ugly features of differentiation, so that the entire cosmos totally melted into one single illumination. Songs in praise of the Buddha and the Dharma sprang up spontaneously. At that time, summoned by the Buddha, the Bodhisattva Manjushri rose from his seat, saluted the Buddha at his feet and sang.
The ocean of awakening abides in clear perfection, for this is the very nature of it. Once it shines forth, the differentiation between the agent illumining and the object illumined disappears by itself. Deluded by the dusts of defilement, people look into the space wherein the world is manifested. They differentiate the non-sentient as the country and the sentient as the living beings in it. Because the original awakening of the true existence is vast, these differentiated manifestations in space resemble water bubbles floating over the ocean. Innumerable defiled lands are all equally born from this space. When these bubbles disappear, it is known that they are originally non-existent. When dust particles are swept away, it is known that originally there is no space as well. Not only the land that appeared in the space perishes, but the beings too disappear like apparitions. Once these have disappeared, it is known that originally there is no differentiation but only varieties of skillful manifestations. Because the sublime nature of the absolutely real world is omnipresent, every aspect of this world, happiness and adversity, is known to be a skillful manifestation of the Buddha.
Having listened to the accounts and songs of these bodhisattvas, Ananda and various other disciples experienced an opening of their minds, understanding the true nature of the mind, the Tathāgatagarbha, which constituted the true original world, just as a traveler can recollect his way back to his home though far away from it. Fixing his robes and holding his palms together, Ananda addressed the Buddha reverentially and said, "O Bhagwan, I have now clearly seen the path through which we can become Buddhas, and I have no more doubt about the practice of this path. I am only worried, however, for those in the distant future. Being more remote from the time of the Buddha, they may forever stray, under the influence of false teachers. How can they keep their minds in control and not be disturbed by maras, and courageously strive for the path of awakening?"
O Ananda, your question will be of infinite benefit to the generations to come. Listen attentively to what I say to you. Ananda, I once taught on the subject of the three learnings, namely, precepts, concentration, and insight. It is through practicing the moral precepts that one keeps his mind in control. By way of the moral precepts, one develops the capacity in the discipline of meditation, and finally, by way of meditation, one opens the ultimate insight. As to how to keep the mind in control, my answer is that one must eliminate the mind of greed, for when one accomplishes this, one will no longer be subject to the cycle of life and death. As to the practice of meditation, it is basically to free oneself from defilements. Unless one eliminates greed, one cannot be free from defilement. Thus, no matter how much one has practiced meditation and cultivated insight, unless one is free from greed, he will be bound to fall into the path of maras and disturb others also. One who has not realized awakening himself but speaks as if he had, and becomes a teacher who leads people to the hells of attachment, belongs to this ilk. Therefore, in order to teach the practice of meditation, it is essential first to teach how to eliminate the mind of greed. All the Buddhas taught this as the foremost important step. O Ananda, those who practice meditation without eradicating the mind of greed are, as it were, attempting to boil sand and gravel in order to obtain cooked rice. No matter how long, even 100,000 kalpas or more, they boil them, they will get nothing but heated sand and gravel. There is no other way for them but to fall into the three evil paths all through these kalpas. Moreover, Ananda, without parting from the mind of injuring others or eliminating that of stealing, no one can liberate himself from the dusts of defilement. No matter how long he practices meditation and sharpens his insight, unless he has parted from the mind of killing, he will fall into the path of devils. Unless he eliminates the mind of stealing, he will fall into the path of evil spirits. O Ananda, moreover, even when he has parted from the mind of killing, stealing, and greed, if he speaks falsehood, he will lose the seed for becoming a Buddha. He who claims that he has attained a certain state though he has actually not, or claims that he has realized awakening though he has not, or speaks of himself as if he were most superior and abuses people's offerings, is destroying good roots, making himself unable to return to the right understanding. It is like chopping up feces, making them look like sandalwood, and trying to seek in them the fragrance of the wood. Therefore, a disciple of the Buddha must keep his mind in a state like that of a straight thread, so that he can enter the state of meditation, escape from the attempts of the maras forever, and eventually realize the insight of bodhisattvas.